Listen, if I had a monkey, I would want it to be very on target. I wouldn't want it to just go everywhere. I'd want it to hit what it was trying to hit. And then that way, we wouldn't have to worry about it, hitting people it wasn't supposed to. It just makes sense to me.
Okay. Well, maybe we should take the first step and figure out how we can keep our cats from puking everywhere.
Welcome to Critical Café.
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
All while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage,
settle into your favorite cozy spot,
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome to Critical Café. We're going to be talking about Campaign 3, Episode 38. My name is Brian. This is Crystal.
Hi.
And let's get right into it. All right, so we left off right where they were wrapping up things with the defeat of Delilah. Whatever that means, by the way. We don't really know exactly what happened to Delilah Briarwood, but at any rate, the group is waking up and they're waiting to see what's going to happen with Laudna. So, they've got Pike there and everything else. So why don't you kick us off with how that all went from the beginning of the show?
Well, they all woke up. And they were asking Pike if it was successful. So Pike went in and I guess examined the link that was there. I guess the soul, the link between the two. And when she kind of came away from the examination, she said that there was still a link between Laudna and Delilah, but that it was greatly diminished. And that, the group had left Delilah screaming and, made me think that she was weaker or in pain of some nature. And so I feel like they kind of pushed her back from Laudna a lot. So with that, Lady DeRollo, Vexalia gave the okay for Pike to go ahead and bring Laudna back.
Yeah. Oh, I completely forgot to mention this at the top, but it was their Halloween episode, so they were all dressed up, and so you had Travis as Wolverine. Although what was really funny is he said he was Peter Rasputin, which is Colossus cosplaying as Wolverine because he was so tall. You had
Marisha. They were all X-Men.
They were all X-Men. Well, almost all of them were X-Men,
except for Sam.
Except for Sam, who was playing Mr. Fantastic with the crazy arms the whole time, which was really funny. Rogue in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you had Laura playing Rogue. You had Liam playing Cyclops. And probably the best Gambit that I've ever seen cosplayed in Matt Mercer. And then you had the White Queen from Ashley. So everybody was doing well. But here's why that made me think of it. They're bringing back, or they're trying to bring back Laudna, and Marisha is dressed as the Dark Phoenix Green Jay, or Jean Grey. So it makes me, not Green Jay, Jean Grey. So it made me keep thinking, is she going to come back with this Phoenix force hidden within her, this Dark Phoenix, coming back? I was like, is she trying to tell us something with the whole Dark Phoenix thing? Anyway, I just thought it was funny. Everybody looked great though. It was a good cosplay.
Yeah, well, I really loved her outfit. It was super cool.
Yeah.
But I never saw those movies or read those comic books, so I get the reference, but I don't really have a lot of context for it.
Yeah, and what was cool to me, what was awesome to me, and this kind of shows my age a little bit too, but also, I guess I'm not that much older than most of the cast, because all of the costumes, the versions of the costumes that they were all wearing, were the comics that, were popular. Yeah. Those were the versions of the comics when I was coming up, so, it was really kind of cool. It was all the whole Jim Lee era version of most of those costumes and stuff, and so anyway, it was just a side note.
Actually, I think we're the same age as the cast for the most part.
Yeah, that's true. It just made me think. So we've got Pike trying to bring it back. We get the okay from Vex, and so then what happens? What goes on from that point?
Well, she goes in, completes her ritual, and it's funny because she gets done with the ritual and nothing happens. And she looks over at the group and is like, does anybody hear a heartbeat, or does she breathe, or can anybody hear a breath? And they're like, well, she doesn't breathe, So it took a little bit for her to come to.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a funny moment, like a pause, like a longer pause than what was necessary for her to just then be like, So it was funny.
It was,
but
really
glad to have her back. So everybody clapped, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It was good to have her back in the cast, but also like when she came back, it was interesting because again, and I was wrong on this. Like, I had this feeling that she was not going to come back the same, and it appears to be from like at least the initial meeting with her again after she comes back that she remembers everything that happened. She remembers most of the stuff. She knows all of them. They're all familiar. It appears to be Laudna, as far as we know, like at least the initial coming back. Now she's still having to, get back to full strength over the next few days, but at least,
right,
in appearance and personality, it seems to be Laudna, which is great. So
right, and Pike mentioned that there's still a tether, but that it's less. So we did see her cast some warlock spells without having any trouble. So, she still has her patron. Because that was one of my questions. What if she wakes up and she can't cast any of her warlock spells?
It's interesting. Like, I don't even know how that, like, in the story is working. I guess, here's my thought on that. We can talk more as we go, I guess. But, like, I would imagine that Delilah's reason for staying around as her patron is because she's also tethered, and the fact that like she needs that relationship.
I kind of feel like when they were having the whole conversation around the dreamscape tree dream, that she needed Laudna just as much as Laudna needed her. Yeah. I still feel like she's a lich. Especially whenever her visage changed and she had the skull with the burning green eyes, and that just reinforced my thought that she's a lich. But I think that there are other ways that she's tethered, but Laudna might be the only living one, the only one where she has like a real life and can.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
maybe she's the only way she can control things in the present to some extent and gain more power. Something.
Yeah, because
that's
like
kind of the thought that I had.
Like, this is that's so good. Yeah, that's a really good thought because, like, if Laudna in our mind is still a phylactery of some sort, and if she if Delilah has multiple phylacteries because she says this isn't the only way, but it is the most convenient way, right? I think you hit it on the head with it, because any other type of phylactery that is an inanimate object can't move, can't think, can't do stuff, can't go anywhere. It is completely vulnerable except for the protections around it, like whether or not it was in a vault or has some other people protecting it. When you have a living phylactery, it can take care of itself. And to your point, it's also clinging on to life at some level, so maybe it's an easier way for her back in. So it's kind of like
she siphons magic through her. She gains power. Whereas I know an inanimate phylactery can somewhat bounce to undead things, I think, around it, but something has to be there, and it has to be undead. Such
a good idea, yeah.
That either has to be convenient, or there has to be someone working for you to do that for you. I think Laudna is the easiest means for her to be up and around and still having like a foothold in the realm of the living. I think that there's a level of convenience for her.
Yeah,
and I think
that's it.
Laudna's her best choice when it comes down to it.
Then they go a little bit of an adventure, right? Like they start looking around, but even first looking out of the place, Percy was taking no chances. He's got riflemen everywhere. He's I think got bad news or somewhere way down. He's got a position. He's got her in
He's been a
sights.
sniper.
Yeah, he was waiting for the okay from Vex, which she gave to say, you know, it's the right one came back, so to speak. So,
right.
You know, it's a little crazy having, and just think about too, like, you know, this is the full time you really get to see the whole Whitestone Corps in full regalia, right? Like the first time we've ever seen it, so that they're like, you know, we can read about it and stuff, but like to be able to hear how they work together, and you know, it's pretty cool.
Well, I think it was even the first knowledge of it was the guys uncloaking in the room, which no one had a clue about. You know, like they were in there with bows and arrows and you know, they were trained on Laudna, and then once it was the thumbs up was given that it was her that was back, they all kind of revealed themselves and looked like, oh, okay, all right. And then, you know, as they're like opening up the next room, there's more, and then right outside the door there's more. I mean, you know, it's just like that epic moment in like a show where it's like the person opening up their coat and dropping out all of their, you know, their weapons, their knives and their whatever. It's like more and more and more. They were not taking any chances that Delilah was going to get away, because they've killed her so many times. So
not only are they not taking chances, but they're not even letting the rest of the group know that they're not taking chances in the way that they like. They're just like, nope, this is just the way it's going to be. Also, like they start going around a little bit and like letting her sort of, you know, get her legs under her, so to speak, and venture out into the area. So that's interesting too. Just her being back in Whitestone.
Well, she was originally so upset when they broke the news to her that she was in Whitestone, because when she fled Whitestone, it was horrible. Yeah. You know, it was still in the clutches of Delilah and Silas, and she hadn't been back since the Derolos got it back and reclaimed it and turned it around and made it the city of beauty, and the, you know, the sun tree's back, and, you know, everything is positive versus doom and gloom and, you know, dark. So I think it was kind of like a redemption. Lady Derolo took her around for like a tour, and they ended up at Sun Tree, which I thought was pretty brave of Laudna to want to even do that.
Yeah, I thought so too. And what's interesting to me is like going to the Sun Tree and her putting her hand on the Sun Tree and feeling the warmth in it, having everybody else do it too. But then really interesting, but I know where we're going with that, but like why you left, but even before that, before or after, I can't remember, but she does her form of dread and it looks like the Sun Tree a little bit, right? Like it takes the form of the Sun Tree incorporated into her form of dread now, which is really interesting to me, like how that's tied to that, which makes me think, if you remember talking about like who could potentially, if she had to get rid of her patron and get a different patron, could the Sun Tree be her patron?
I don't know.
Like, you know, because you can have an Archfey as a patron. Could the Sun Tree be considered an Archfey, or that connection to nature? I don't know. Like, it would be cool though. But I know what you were giggling about, and that was she learned about Pate and how she could create call her new familiar. So really so
freaking hilarious. Especially, you know, like Percy comes over and she's like, oh, let me introduce you to my Percy, you know, like I have a rat named after you. And then she pulled Percy out and starts talking, you know, and the next thing you know, she, you know, casts, what is it that the warlock has? It's not find my familiar, because they actually have to create it, right?
It's a pact. It's I think it's pact of the chain that like gets the familiar. But yeah, it's sort of like, and it's basically they're flavoring Pate. It's an imp, right? So like they're making using the imp stats to look like Pate,
rat,
which is like
imp thing.
It's very,
but he's so
with
cool
with a Cockney accent, and like
he's like, hey, guys.
Yeah.
It's so funny because it's Matt doing Marisha's voice that she get. Now Marisha isn't puppeting him. Yep. Now Matt is his voice. So yes. that part, because he's a sentient being, so much, to a certain extent, yes. So that part was really interesting because it gave him a whole different kind of personality. It's real sarcastic, kind of like cheeky, so like.
Kudos to Matt for not only playing the characters really well and like following through with all the accent stuff, but like playing them the way that the other people had them set up. Which means and I mean that in the sense of like all of the NPCs that he's using right now for the most part were their characters previously. Yeah. And even down to having Pate, which was a made up figment character of Marisha's design. Now that it's sentient, he takes that and he runs with it and he keeps the same accent, keeps the same tone to it. Like it's just really well done. Like sometimes, everybody talks about how good Matt Mercer is, and he is amazing at as a DM, but the little things like that to me go a long way, because those are the things that as a DM you earn cred with your players, right? Like because they start to trust you more, because they know that like, hey, the stuff that I'm throwing into the game, the DM is picking up on it and running with it. So it makes the players feel like, their contribution was awesome. Anyway, it was, I really think that those understated things go a long way for me. So,
well, and as much as someone just jumping in might think, oh, this creepy lady has this, dead rat looking thing with a skull it's super creepy. But when we got to go back and see kind of her memories, like those were really her only friends. Oh, yeah. Any of those little dolls that she made, those were the only companions that she had. So they were really important to her. So of course they kind of took on their own personality, and she's a little mad, which is what makes her kooky and fun, So I think that him becoming an imp or like a familiar was perfect.
Yeah, it's like for anybody that saw the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, where he's on that island and he starts talking to Wilson, the ball, because like that's the only friend he's got, so he starts talking about Wilson, and when Wilson gets lost at sea, he's like, Wilson! He's like, he starts crying and bawling his eyes out because that was his make-believe friend that stayed with him during all that time. It's no different for her and Pate. Like, she put that together, like, so that she had somebody to cope with. And it's just cool that they're able to kind of work that back in a different way. Yeah. Which I'm really interested to see, which we find a little bit more about what's going on with Mr. But I'm loving the fact that Matt's going to have to pull off a potential Mr. and Pate conversation / encounter at some point, and that's going to be really fun. And speaking of Mr., a little bit later, there's this whole dinner scene. So should we move into that whole deal with how everything moves to the dinner encounter?
Sure. So. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I thought was kind of cool was, they invited them to dinner, and I think they had their appetizers and their drinks and, talking about things. And then I think all of a sudden, like, Imogen speaks to Lady DeRollo in her mind and is like, hey, just really quick, I don't really know what you guys are planning on serving, but then, the whole night that she was here with Delilah, they had a big lobster dinner. So if lobster, just a heads up, if lobster is what you're serving, we might not want to do that because, they're trying not to re-trigger her. She's already in a space, the place and the house and, the whole area. The fact that she's able to even like hold herself together, I really do think it shows how much trauma she's been through. Like, she's at that point in her trauma where she's just like, okay, whatever, it's like, so totally. Imogen's trying to pull it away from that as much as she can and kind of, make sure that what new memories she has are possibly good ones and not, re-triggering of bad ones. So Lady DeRollo runs off And apparently they were going to have lobster, so thank goodness for that.
Yeah, really well played by Laura, and just that whole, like, just thinking that and making sure on her part. And then, a lot of funny things are happening too during this whole period. So you got FCG trying to talk Percy into therapy. You've got like we were saying before, you've got Fern asking Percy to make a gun for
Mister's poop seed, flame seed.
Yeah, to better fire monkey flaming poo. And I don't know why that was weird. I think that was a very valid request. If you're gonna have a flaming monkey, it should be efficient and have good aim when it's throwing its flaming poo. Listen, if I had a monkey, I would want it to be very on target. I wouldn't want it to just go everywhere. I'd want it to hit what it was trying to hit, and then that way we wouldn't have to worry about it, hitting people it wasn't supposed to. It just makes sense to me.
Okay. Well, maybe we should take the first step and figure out how we can keep our cats from puking everywhere. Cats and hairballs.
Ooh, flip.
That we step on in the middle of the night.
Familiar with flaming hairballs.
Acid hairballs.
Oh, yeah, that would be
acid
good.
hairballs.
That would be good.
So gross, having a long-haired cat. So anyway.
True. Anyway.
She goes on and on and on about how she wants a little gun for Mister, who, I mean, like, his IQ is not very much. Like, he's like a small child. Like, she's going to give him a gun. Of course,
it works out.
Yeah. They end up having potato soup for dinner for their entree. And then they start talking about the whole, like, everybody's making jokes about the gun with Mister, and Percy runs off and comes back with pretty much like a potato shooter type gun that I guess his kids played with more so when they were like teenagers. But
yeah,
I'm like, oh my gosh, now we're going to have a flaming monkey with a gun shooting poo.
Well,
okay.
So as the conversation gets to be more, down to earth, so to speak, actually the opposite of down to earth, it brings back the whole, they start talking about what's going on with the whole divine gate, right? The potions of possibility, the residuum, they have all the conversation around that. And that's where Percy kind of breaks down, what he knows about what's going on with the divine gate, right?
They get into talking about all the stuff, and, they're just like vomiting words everywhere, and they're like, oh, it is a lot, we're sorry. And so they talk about the residuum, and then they talk about the different shipments, and they talk about the Cerberus assembly, and they talk about the potions of possibility, and then then they get into Ruidus and the study of Ruidus, and and then how they saw this netting across Ruidus, and Percy perked up and started drawing, and pushed it over and asked Imogen, is this what you saw? Which was like this prismatic kind of netting that wasn't like it was a very detailed, intricate net versus just a plain lattice work, but in a prismatic type of way. And she was like, yes, this is exactly it. And I guess just with their dealings in Vox Machina, they had encountered the divine gate a time or two. So he was like, well, that's the divine gate. And so they were asking all these questions about, okay, well, is there just one? Where do they exist? So, he was explaining that it's really something that's meant to separate the gods from Exandria, and it's more of a plane thing. Mm-hmm. It exists anywhere that the gods are to separate them from Exandria. And that was the part that was concerning, was that Ruidus is in Exandria. And it's visible with a certain type of lens and telescope to be that close. So they didn't have a whole lot more to say about it.
Yeah, but interesting
other
stuff,
than he was going to do some more research, but...
Yeah, I mean, at least they found out a little bit more in that realm of what was going on. And then, I think it was there that... I think Percy leaves, and then doesn't Vex give Laudna the ring?
Yeah. Percy says he's gonna go to bed, so he asks Vexalia to accompany him, and she's like, no, I'm gonna hang back for a little bit. So she just goes over to Laudna and personally, like, really gets close to her and apologizes and explains that she feels like they were part of the reason why what happened to her. And she took off a ring. It was just a simple, like, silver platinum colored band, and asked her to keep it, that she wanted her to have it, that it had protected her, and she felt like she could use it more. And so she gave it to her, which was really nice. And then she pretty much was like, okay, I'm going to go drink myself into a stupor,
Yeah.
And Fern was, well, if you want to find us, you can come to our rooms later. Chaotic Fern. So she went to bed. They all decided that they didn't want to, Laudna decided she didn't want to stay and sleep in the manor. So she wanted to go sleep back at the Sun Tree. And so everybody decided that they would go and stay with her at the Sun Tree. They kind of grabbed robes and shoes and, pies and blankets and, whatever things they came up with that Matt didn't mention. They're like, oh yeah, there's pie over here that nobody ate, I'm gonna take it with us.
Yeah.
Liam. So and then they just went to the Sun Tree to sleep, because it's it stays pretty warm around the Sun Tree. It was colder at night, but there was no frost or anything that was around it, and I think it just makes her feel really, she felt a connection to it whenever she touched it beforehand. So I think she feels really comfortable. She has a lot of history with the Sun Tree, and I think the fact that now it's warm and comfortable to her, I think, is very soothing. So
it's a good reset spot for her, like, to kind of see it in a way that she didn't get to see it before. Well, that she saw it before, but maybe not when the Briarwoods were there, and now she's able to maybe sense a little bit of her coming back, well, and
I don't know if she's very warm, I think she stays a little cold, because
of course,
she doesn't really pump blood that much. She's half almost dead, so she probably stays a level of cool or cold like a vampire would. So I feel like that probably makes her feel like it's a warm embrace almost. So I thought that was cool.
Which it seemed, and that was their break. They kind of went to sleep there and took their break, and then they picked up where they wake up, kind of. So let's get into the second half of the show. So second half, they just got done sleeping, but not quite, because this is the end of the long rest. But Matt starts explaining that there was a dream, and then they kind of go into the dream world a little bit. Sam reminds Matt that he had been casting Shared Dream pretty much every night to make sure that he can stay on top of things, so that they did that. So what that means, that Imogen and FCG are now in the dream, in Imogen's dream. So that was really interesting to see how that turned out too.
Yeah. And I think what was kind of really cool about this dream is she had more control over this dream than she's had over any of her dreams. Yeah. She realized, like, she tried to fly and she was able to fly. She tried several different things and she was able to do them. And now I don't know if that's just because her powers have progressed, because is this the first one that she's had since her powers exploded with Odahan?
I think so.
It was all the same, all the same fight. So I feel like this is the first significant thing in, like, with Ruidus that's happened with her, other than that white, like, at the end of the fight, everything blowing up, and everybody having all these dreams or these visions, and then like the whole radius around them shattering, but they're safe. So I feel like this is the first dream that she's had, the red, on Ruidus. So it was since really
the encounter
interesting
with Odahan, really, right? Like, part of me wonders if the Odahan has an effect on that. I don't know. I'll have to think more and see what happens. I've been doing a lot of kind of tinfoil hat theorying about about Laudna, I need to kind of switch gears a little bit and see what I think about Imogen, because there's a little bit of I don't know, something going on there. Like, of the two, they seem to be the ones that have, like, I almost thought that it would have been Laura wielding the Dark Phoenix outfit of having that power within or whatever, because it kind of feels like that to me, like very Jean Grey of the X-Men type of thing. But I'm really interested to see how it turns out with whether or not it's the phases or Ruidus's tie to the planet, or her connection with other Ruidus-born people. Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
I just think that my personal opinion is, I think that the fight that she had with Odahan, she let a level of control go at the end. And I think it moved her closer to giving control away, but she was still able to grasp some of it back. Which is why I think when she came back, she's got some other feat, Ruidus type feat that she can do that also hurts her a little bit, though. But I think it might hurt her how FCG's thing hurts him, where it's like weakening her level of control over her powers, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you're right. I think it's a matter of, like, power versus control, how much she can tap into it willingly versus what just happens on its own.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think Imogen is extremely powerful. Okay. So, like, they're in the dream, FCG's there with her, and it's kind of like the dream she had with, Bertrand Bell, where she sees a figure off in the distance that looks familiar, and they're turning and walking into, the red moon or the red haze. And that has happened when people have died. So,
and Matt describes this figure as masculine looking figure, perhaps a warrior. Yeah. I know. I think I turned to you and I was like, well, we know who that is. So
and I was like, no, I don't want it to be him. I don't want it to be him. But we knew
it had to be Estros, right? Like,
I know.
It had to be Estros, because, like, Odahan was after him. There was this whole thing, but also, like, I couldn't rack my head to figure out, like, who is the warrior that they have a connection to. There wasn't really any warrior figure other than him that they really had a connection to. So yeah, it's
I mean, the only other people that would even fall somewhat in that category might have been Gurge, or the the guys that were the investigators, but they were so loosely connected. It really was. It would have been a stretch for them to for her to really recognize them. Over it being Odahan. So
that they once they come to, then it becomes like, what are we going to do now, right? So they had some shopping they wanted to do. They went to the branch, or some of them wanted to go to Gilmore's, but even before that, I think they sent the message to try to book passage through the Suntree, which was interesting how they worded all that stuff.
Fern's conversation she had with the Suntree was cool.
That's true. Yeah. The Sun makes his resurgence to the Suntree voice, which was funny.
Yeah. The other thing that was cool, though, was FCG's whole side story. Everybody else went kind of shopping to Gilmore's, and FCG went straight to the temple to see if he could get some more answers. And
I thought that was really well done too. Like, just the way he went there and the way Matt handled it too.
I think so too. And I think it's ambiguous enough for a little guy who really doesn't know who he is, like it's just the person who is the travel, like the waymakers, the patron of the roads and all of the ways to go, to travel and to get around. And
yeah,
I think that part was really cool.
Perfect.
The Changebringer. Yeah, the Changebringer.
So yeah, I think Changebringer seems to be like the perfect fit for all of that, kind of feel that he's going for, right? Like, I don't know, it seems to work. And I think it was nice that like the coin thing was something that led him there, and then the priest, had the coin around his neck too. I think that was a really, really well done. Not too heavy-handed on making the app, and it was sort of like, let's just see where it goes.
And I think for FCG, this whole time, I think he's been telling himself that he doesn't have a soul. And so the minute that he does find out that he has one, he's like, okay, what do I do now? Like, there's all these things that I have to do. I have to actually take things seriously, and then like, even with Laudna, he tried to compel her to come back.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think he would have done that before knowing he had a soul? Because I think he's taking life so much more serious now.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I think, I don't know if he would have done that, but I thought it was also really interesting back to the beginning, like when this happened, that Imogen made a point to say, no one should tell you what you want to do. Like, if you want to stay, you should stay. Which is really interesting. And I do think that there's a little bit of that, he's touched the divine a little bit and is not really sure what to do with it.
Right. Well, so. I think Sam is such a good I think he's such a good actor. He's so good at his characters that I think what's happening is I think that some of how FCG is feeling frantic in his mind about how he's got to do all these things. He's got to make all of these like improvements. He's got to do all this stuff. I think like his first thing is he's got to help bring this soul back, like if he can't help bring this soul back, he fails, but I think,
yeah.
And he did it wrong because it's like he's like a baby, like he's just now grasping that he's got a soul.
Well, it's also really well done because it's what you would do if you were programmed to seek and destroy and kill and get the job done. And then all of a sudden, if you're trying to go the other route, then you go, oh, I need to make everybody happy. I need to have everybody smiling. I need to fix people.
Yeah.
Instead of hurt people, he flips something. He now wants to fix people.
And I'll force it if I have to.
Exactly. And it can go down that road where he becomes too far down that path. And then he becomes I've got to force it upon people to be righteous and right and do the right thing and all these other things where like.
Which is why I think the group, especially Imogen in that moment saying no. Yeah. No one should ever make you. Like they're teaching him. And
it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of moral dilemmas. There's a lot of moral teachings going on,
It's like what's awesome. Like again, just kind of like side note, but like totally pertinent. This is why D&D can be so great, right? Like you can have these types of discussions and stories in some weird fantastical world that is not real with made-up characters that are not real, but
with a metal robot.
Yeah, with a metal robot and a werewolf gnome, and like you can do this stuff and still talk about and have stories about and debate topics about real things that are very important to people, and do it in a way that is very meaningful and probably get people thinking about it more than if they had been, doing some type of strict research on a certain thing or having, a debate over coffee without any type of story to bring them in. Like, it's not to say those things aren't good, but it's like, it's so interesting to me how this stuff brings up, because at the end of the day, you're creating stories about people.
Right.
Even if the people are crazy fantasy people with all kinds of weird,
Well, and it was great that he, on top of it, he failed that role, so an immediate lesson, of, I mean, I was in the bed going, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, you don't compel a soul to come back. Like,
yeah.
Jeez, man. I was like, Sam, what are you
right.
doing? And then I was like, oh, it's not, Sam is playing his role. He's playing his character.
Yep.
And, he's just this little metal boy who finds out for the first time he's got a soul and he's got all these powers, and what he does matters now, and
he doesn't want anybody else to go away, or to ruin theirs. So it's really,
and so this his journey, and then he gets to the temple and he's asking all these questions, and he's at, and he's like really trying to figure out, like, what am I supposed to do? And the guy's like, I can't tell you what to do. You've got to figure it out yourself.
So they end up wrapping up their shopping spree and their trip to the temple and all that stuff. They finally go through, and they're like, wait a minute, we really think something might have happened to Estros because we tried to do the message, just isn't working. It's getting some bad feelings, especially because of the dream. They show up, and then they start moving towards town. They can't get a hold of him.
Yeah. It's super early in the morning, so they're hoping it's because he's sleeping.
Yeah, the whole time zone thing. And then they start going down the street, and then they rightfully, like, figure out what's the best way to approach this, because they know the place is trapped. They know that there's a possibility that they spring one of these things. So it's Chetney and Pate team up to go infiltrate the area with Laudna in mental communication with Pate, also sending things back and forth with Chetney. It's a very complex situation of communication. And then they see, man, there's this whole disturbance within inside. They're able to kind of get in and know what's going on. Chetney immediately starts smelling blood. Something bad's happening. They're sending that information back, and he tracks it and starts heading upstairs. And then you just know, as he's going up there, he sees the cane or the walking stick, and then underneath the bed, like, hand reaching toward the middle of the bed as if he was going for something. Chetney's like, well, what is he going for? He goes and finds the metal box. Ends up getting in it, and then there's letters. Each one, it seems to be almost like in the case of me not making it type of thing, where it seems that way, or like, this is what I'm doing just in case I need to. And he has these letters written to various people, but including Bell's Hells. And really interesting. I mean, it's sad that we've got that going on, but interesting situation there with the leaving them the airship. And just, I don't know, what were your thoughts having gone through all of that and seeing, like, how all that played out? What were your thoughts about the fact that they now know Odahan showed up and took care of him?
So, I mean, obviously, like, the minute that Chetney got the door unlocked and the door opened, and the first thing you're hit with is, like, the smell of blood. And then, Matt is such a good describer of things. He's talking about, like, Pate goes in first, and he's looking around, there's, like, cuts everywhere, and everything is torn up, and there's blood, and there's just stuff everywhere. Like, a great battle has ensued, And then up the stairs, there's smears of blood. And then, like you said, down the hallway, there's, like, massive smeared blood. And then the cane, and then he's in the floor with his hand reaching under the bed. What I like about it is Matt went through so much to describe how much he fought. Like, this man was fierce.
Yeah.
And he was elderly, and he kicked butt. Like, if he held his own against Odahan for even a fraction of a second, we saw how well that went for the Bell's Hells, so it's like he paid homage to him. He went out a warrior's way. He knew that she was going to come after him. He said he'd been preparing for it. We knew his house was booby trapped from top to bottom. And so I think that he really did his best. But I think he also was an old man at the end of his life. And I think he was lonely, I think, until they came into his life. So, yeah, I mean, it was was really sad. I mean, they left him the sky ship, or he left them the sky ship, and then his recipe for his cookies, and so that was really, it was a good moment, but a sad moment in the same instance. And then, of course, Pate's like, oh yeah, he's good and dead, like, because everybody back outside still doesn't quite know what's going on, it's like,
This could be great.
So, I mean, by the way, I can't do accents at all. Brian's the better one with the accents, so I just do them to be funny, and I don't care. But so anyways, it was interesting, and Chetney grabbed all of the letters, so I'm sure that they're going to make sure that it's them. But and then he also left his staff, or his cane sword, to them too. So on the way out, he picked that up and was headed down. The whole time they were being super cautious because they weren't sure how soon that fight had happened. I think we still don't quite know if Imogen is being pulled into these dreams at the moment that the soul is kind of crossing the path. Did he die in that moment, or was this when she fell asleep? Was this the residual? Okay, all right, the soul's crossed over. We're just letting her know,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it would mean, like, to me, if it was happening at that time, it would mean that she would already have to be asleep when the thing was happening, and because she's asleep, it came into the dreams or something.
And then my question about that too is, are we going to see every single person that Imogen knows die when they die in a dream, or are the people who are dying connected to Ruidus? Was Bertrand connected to Ruidus, other than through the creepy crawly,
I don't know. It's a good question. I think, like, there's something to how that works that we just don't know yet. There's a lot we don't know yet when it comes to Imogen. So I don't know. I'm really curious to see how that plays out, as far as like her discovering how it works, but also how the dreams work in general for her. So
yeah,
and I think,
are we going to see every single person she has known in her life as they cross over?
I don't know. I mean,
there's got to be. I would hope not. That'd be really morbid.
Yeah, I think there's part of it. Part of me, like, is also wondering if it's a message, like if it's not necessarily just like a warning, but if it, like, could it also be that, like, someone is trying to warn her that this is happening, like people around you are dying, like someone that can speak through the dreams may be saying, hey, be careful, your friends close to you are dying, and I'm trying to let you know that now. Like it could be a bad omen, like the way it's kind of being taken right now, I think, is like, this is happening. But it could also be, hey, I've been trying to warn you. Once they find out who this is, if it is a person or an entity, it could be, I'm trying to let you know what's happening, to keep you up to speed with what's going on. Because think about what if she didn't have that dream, they wouldn't have gone back there at the right time. Maybe they would have shown up and it was long after or right before, and they get into it with Odahan again. So I don't know. It's interesting to me.
I wouldn't necessarily take it as a bad thing. I would appreciate the knowledge, but I think it would just be sad over time if it was, every single person that you knew, when you went to sleep at night, you saw somebody die, or you saw that they were dead,
No, and I 100% agree. But I do think that Imogen is feeling it like a bad omen. Like she's seeing it like, all I'm seeing is death. Everybody that I come across eventually dies, and part of me is wondering is if she's looking at it like that, but she's not getting that. Hey, like, what if someone else was sending those images and going, hey, I'm trying to warn you so that you don't screw this up, or so that you don't get caught up in this and die too. And she finds out it's somebody trying to help her later. That might be a different take on what these images are.
The whole time she's having some of those dreams, her mother is telling her to run. Don't give in, turn and run, turn and run. And so I think that's how she's built up. That's why she hasn't just given in. She's been told her whole life to run from it by her mom. And so I think in a way, some of it is good.
Yeah,
you know?
it's just why hasn't she tried to contact her mom, do you think?
I think she's scared. I
'Cause,
think
like,
she's scared.
Because she knows that she's alive, right? So
Yeah.
so she should be, if she can send a message to Esteros, she should be able to send a message to her mom.
Yeah. But I think she is less scared or worried about sending a message to Delilah Briarwood than she is her own mother. And I think it's because she has no real memories of being with her mom. And I think part of her, what she does have are these dreams that up until a certain point she wasn't thinking were real. So I think that there's all this emotional turmoil built up about, well, if she's alive, she left me.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
like she should be the one that reaches out. You know, like, Imogen's the kid, even though she's an adult. So, why should I be the one? But now that time is going on, I think it's starting to look like, okay, wait, maybe she was protecting me.
Maybe, but like, and I agree with everything you just said. I think it's hard, but at some point she's got to be like, I need more information.
Yeah.
One person can give it to me.
Yeah.
And I haven't reached out to them yet, so I don't know.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. We've got an off week this week, so we've got a little bit of time before we see what happens. So I don't know. I'm eager to find out what happens with what's the next stage of this and where they go. I'm guessing it's to go get the ship and then go from there to figure out what they're going to do, but or maybe deliver the other letters. Who knows? But
yeah,
it's gonna be an interesting couple weeks thinking this through. So
yeah, and kind of one of the off to the side things, Imogen pulled out the orb to see if they could tell if Odahan was nearby, but we still don't know if that ring is somewhere on Odahan. So we don't know if Odahan is still in town. We don't know. I mean, how long ago I don't know if Chetney did an investigation to see how long ago, like, he died, Yeah. So we don't really know if it happened in the 24 hours. We don't know if it happened 2 days ago. So, is Odahan still there? Are they going to end up having to run from her again? So,
yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. We'll see.
It will.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for sticking with us again. And we will catch you next time. Have a great week. And we'll see you on a Thursday. Well, after a Thursday where there's a show. All right. Take care.
Bye.